Silicon Valley, technology, art, green, and sustainability.
Welcome to another episode of Silicon Valley Tech, Art, Green, and Sustainability, SVTAGS. I'm honored today to have a gentleman with me that I just met a week or two ago, and you were doing a presentation in Saratoga, which was just fascinating. I wish we could have all the slides and all the information. Nicholas Carter, Dr. Nicholas Carter, PhD, and you just have a fascinating background, and it's NPC Solar is the name of your company?
That's my company, yes.
Yeah, and you have a couple companies, so we may get time to talk about the other thing later.
Okay.
Please tell everybody a little bit about yourself, your background, if you like, where you're from, and whatever you'd like to share.
Well, thank you first for the opportunity to appear on the show, Heather. I really appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate you being here.
We only just met, but I appreciate that opportunity. I don't know how far you want to go back. I guess my wife and I moved to the US in 1997 permanently. We'd both lived here on and off.
It just seems like yesterday, doesn't it?
I have to say yes, it does. And that kind of coincided with the first round, or the first major round of electric vehicles being available, certainly in California. We moved at that time to San Diego, so we were in Southern California. And we started to get involved in the whole scene regarding electric vehicles. I'd been involved with environmental things for years and been aware of some of the issues. But that was the first time where we really felt like we were at the center of a movement that was just beginning.
And so what were you doing when you were in Southern California? What kind of business?
I'd been mostly in software.
In software.
So my PhD, and a software engineer. So my PhD work was in pattern recognition and image processing, interdepartmental between physics and music. So that was kind of pertinent to your.
That's really
your
interesting.
tag.
That's kind of an interesting combination.
Mix, right, but once I moved to the US, I was still involved with software for a few years, but then. Had the chance to move into solar, basically full time.
And where are you from originally?
The south of England.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I was going to say, are you from South Africa or England or?
So yeah, south of England.
I guess I'm not familiar that much with the accent, but it's a great accent.
Thank you.
Anytime you want to do a voiceover for us, it's wonderful. So that's your background, and you kind of switched gears. Tell me how you got into what you're doing now.
Well, I'd wanted to get into solar as more of a career rather than just an interest or a hobby.
As a
or
career,
background.
I mean, how did
as a
you?
career.
Yeah.
And I was looking for an opportunity. So I knew something of the technical aspects. I knew how things were supposed to work, the kind of physics behind it, and knew that it was a great thing. It was an awesome thing that we should be growing. But if you'd put me next to a work truck and said, install 20 panels on this house, I would have been a bit lost and searching through the tools and figuring out. So I actually met a small company owner at a show and tell for electric vehicles. And he was looking for help. He'd showed up with his business cards and his flyers at this event to recruit people. And I said, well, I'm interested in helping. And it turned into a wonderful opportunity that I got to experience all aspects of solar, from design through install, going out in the field, dealing with building inspectors, troubleshooting, you name it, marketing, sales. Got a kind of apprenticeship, really, in the whole industry. And I think it's a bit more difficult now to find that kind of opportunity, given that the industry's grown so much. But it was certainly a wonderful opportunity for me, and that's how I made the transition into solar as a career.
And what company was that?
That was North Bay Solar Electric.
Okay.
So I owe John Takis at North Bay Solar.
And they're still around?
He's still around,
okay.
Yes. He's done a huge number of solar, micro hydro, some wind, all in North Bay, so North San Francisco Bay, Sonoma County mostly.
So we're gonna pull up the first slide, and we're gonna go way back. I don't know which year this was that this was actually filmed, but Who Killed the Electrical Car? You were part of this, and what magazine is this on the left?
On the left is the DVD cover.
And that's you with the hat in the center.
That's
and
me.
you're holding up a
I
photo
admit it, yes.
of your own car. We could pull that down. And I was so impressed with the story. And you kind of had a photo of your first electrical car and your next one. Tell us a little bit about this. Tell us how you got involved with this and what happened. Tell us a little bit if you want, or lie. You can tell us all if you want.
I refer to that as it's not quite a walk-on part. It's a standstill role in the movie. They'd already taken our car away. And so you'll see, if you look in that picture, my picture of the EV that we'd been driving has a black border around it. So it had already died, in effect, and been taken away. The still is taken from an event that we held where 2 other drivers were having to return their cars to a dealership in San Francisco. And so we made a ceremony of it. They draped the cars with the stars and stripes. They had a kind of military procession where they folded the flag carefully. They had somebody from a veterans movement there.
Wow.
They had the bugler playing the taps. It was all quite a moving event, and it was captured by Chris Payne in his movie Who Killed the Electric Car.
And again, what car was it?
I was driving at that time, my wife and I were driving a Think City, and that was made by a Norwegian company that Ford bought actually in order to comply with the California regulations at the time. And then, I don't want to spoil the movie for the people who haven't, I mean, I would recommend it. It tells the story perfectly. I know because we lived through every aspect of that.
So someone knocked on your door, basically, or
so
no?
I was making the payments on the car, I should add.
Right, so it wasn't like a...
It wasn't quite a repo. Well, it wasn't a repo, not in that sense anyway. They weren't, nearly all the EVs that were available at that time weren't available for sale. They weren't available for sale, and if they were leased, they weren't leased to purchase. They were leased basically until the car company decided to take the car away, and then you start getting the calls, which is what we went through. And at one stage I had to stop answering the telephone because I knew it was the people saying, you know, we want our car back, we have to have the car back.
And there was really nothing wrong with the car?
No, everybody loved the cars. That was the sad thing. If you watch the movie, you know, there are people in tears, people got arrested trying to stop it happening. It was just such a travesty, really, because we had a solution to many of our major problems right there and then, and it would be so much better now if we'd gone with it and run with it and developed it and had the 3rd or 4th generation, just like, you know, just like your laptop or something. If somebody came to you and said, well, you obviously like that laptop, but we're going to have to take it away.
It's kind of slow right now. It's like 2009, so please take it.
But back in 2009, if they'd come and said, well, you know, you've had it for 6 months or a year, and obviously you like it, but we're going to take it away. You know, you'd be like this.
Yeah, no, wait, let me download everything first.
Before, yeah. So we'd gone through all the things they describe in the movie of trying to get an EV1 from GM, and they would put barrier after barrier in front of you to say, well, you know, you need a certain credit score. So you go away and you'd establish your credit, you come back and say, I've established my credit score. And they say, oh yeah, well, your credit's good, but you don't own your own home. So then you go away and you buy your own house and you come back again, you say, well, my credit's good and I own my own home, so now I can install a charger. And they'd put another barrier in front of you. And
this is like 2004,
this
2003?
Is early 2000, 2001, that kind of time frame. And eventually, there was no barrier, but there were no cars. They'd come back to you, and eventually they'd just have to admit, well, you know, you've jumped all the hurdles, but we still can't give you a car. You say, well, what, are you selling it? Are you trying to make this product available? And it was very much Alice in Wonderland, kind of very strange, where I'd never come across a company that made a product that was wonderful, that had people who loved it, that were using it, and wanted to take it away, and most of them were destroyed. So that was just a very strange
the photo that you had of the cars somewhere in the Mojave.
That's shown in the movie.
Mojave
out in
Desert.
Arizona, right? They were taken out to the GM Proving Grounds and just
and squished. That really impressed me. And you know, again, I need to rent the movie and see it. So
highly encouraged everybody. And now there's a sequel, so you can.
I think we may have to have an SVTAGS, you know, viewing of it, and maybe you coming and talking about it at the Capitol Club or something. They have this huge big screen. Awesome. So moving on though to question number 3, I love that we're just chatting about this stuff. But tell us about your company. So plugins, solar, what is it you do? Tell us what your company is about.
So NPC Solar, my company, is involved in a mix of different activities. I have clients mostly in California, but I have one major client who's actually on the East Coast and doing a lot of commercial solar now. So I've been helping them. They were originally property developers, and they wanted to establish a solar division. So I helped them to get going in solar, basically, and now they're doing 50, 100, and hopefully a 250 kilowatt job coming up shortly.
Nice.
So they've hired full-time people for their solar work. So they've established their solar division, and now they're just growing it and going from strength to strength. So I've been involved with that. I do some kind of troubleshooting with people's systems locally, business development with different companies. And then just recently I established PV+EV.net, which is more of an advocacy site for both the things we're talking about. PV+EV.net.
Yeah. So PV+EV.net. And what does that stand for?
So it's PV as in photovoltaics for the solar, and then EV for electric vehicles, although it's more to do with plug-in vehicles in general. So it includes plug-in hybrids and pure electric vehicles. And then I guess somebody got to the .com first, so I ended up with .net. But I feel it's a kind of network thing, so I think in a way that's appropriate.
Maybe a .org too?
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. I'm trying to make it a business that does have a viable financial model behind it. So it's advocacy, but it's also a referral mechanism. So if you want to put in solar, or hopefully you want to do solar and get a plug-in vehicle, we can point you in the right direction. We have a number of partners in California, one in Hawaii, one in New York, so we can refer you to them. And we get a small referral fee as a result of that. And then I'm also building a network of car salespeople who specialize in either the Nissan Leaf or the plug-in Prius or RAV4 EV or the Volt. You know, there's a whole variety of cars now. So we can make that transition from just using utility power and driving a gas-powered vehicle over to having the fueling station on your roof, producing clean power and driving a plug-in vehicle. Okay,
and say that again, because I think that's such an important connection for people. So having the fueling station
on your roof
and being able to plug in,
right,
and not use any other energy source.
Right, right. And it's just such a wonderful thing. I mean, I don't know how else to say it, that it's just a fantastic deal.
Well, and we'll come back to that a little bit later. Okay. So consulting then too. So are you designing things for people's
I do some system design.
Systems then too?
Right, yeah.
So it's commercial and home?
It's a whole mixture of activity. Basically, I don't know what's coming from one week to the next, but building relationships with a variety of companies. And I did a proposal just yesterday that might take me off in a different tack again with some consulting, but I like it because it is a mixture. You know, I like the variety.
So a better place, and then it said we'll pull this photo up right now. Because we're gonna get off topic and we're gonna need to go back to the slide. Okay. So this is such an interesting, is it 1903, 1907?
Yeah, it's basically early 20th century.
And it's at the very top, if people can see it, it says the Fashion Automobile Station. And this was in your presentation, and somewhere in the 1900s, battery swapping was not such an uncommon thing.
They were just doing it. Yeah, it was happening back then. I mean, I know technology has moved on, and we have Better Place who's been trying to do the same thing with modern technology. But it just goes to show, you know, we're rediscovering something that we were already doing 100 years ago. And it said, there was a caption, I think, under that picture of it said it was working just fine, or working very well. And I think that speaks wonders. Yeah.
It's amazing that some of these things we're going back to. Rod Dearden spoke at an Acteur thing I was at, and we were talking about the light rail system, or the train system that used to be downtown San Jose, and if that was still here, we would still be so much farther ahead. But there was this big push that everybody needs an automobile, right? We don't need to have this public transportation train thing. And some cities wouldn't pull the rails out, like San Francisco, and I guess LA fought for a long time. And you know, there used to be a station that would go right down Santa Clara and then down Almaden Boulevard. And you know, now they're looking back at doing all these connections, and we'd be so much ahead if those lines were still, you know, laid down.
And I wouldn't advocate driving electric vehicle over and above. We had this discussion, right? I would certainly say walking or riding a bicycle or riding public transit, hopefully electric powered public transit. I would certainly put those above driving an electric vehicle, but there's a lot of people using cars, using gas-powered cars that
Yeah.
could make the switch, and I think would enjoy it. It's so much fun to get in your car.
And I think that
every
the
day.
important thing to say there is, you know, I grew up, I was like such a tomboy when I was a kid. I was always in the trees, and you know, and now I look a little feminine today, but I'm more comfortable in my jeans. But when you go to work, you need to be dressed in an appropriate fashion.
Mm-hmm.
So getting the building owners and the businesses to have a place where you can drive to work, shower, change, and maybe have a suit there handy if you have a business
Mm-hmm.
meeting, and you know, wear your workout clothes the rest of the time if you don't have a meeting. Getting that mind switch, and there's a little bit of that going on. Some of the new lead buildings that are going in,
Mm-hmm.
you know, it has to be standard to have a place for bicycles and a place to shower and, you know, a place for the plug-ins.
Right,
So
right.
there is a little bit of that change, but it needs to happen a little faster.
Yeah, and I think obviously there is some effort if you're going to bike to work, and like you say, you're going to need the shower, you're going to need some way to change, maybe a locker to store your clothes. But driving a plug-in vehicle is so much more convenient, I think. I don't know how people have got into that mindset that it's awkward or it's a disadvantage. I mean, just never have to go to the gas station again. Just seems like a no-brainer to me to drive into your garage, just grab the plug and do that, and that's your entire interaction with fueling the car.
And so this is a good lead into the other question, question 5, which is energy usage. Why go solar? You know, the return on the investment for people. You know, there's that mindset that they can't afford it. And I guess let's pull up that slide 3 right now too, that I think maybe from. Yeah, so this is from your part. There's actually 2 slides together there. Tell us what this is here on the bottom there.
So the big message on the bottom is that solar is by far the largest energy resource that we have available on the planet. And it's renewable. It just keeps on giving. So it's not like once we've used up that yellow
bubble,
blob
yeah.
there, that bubble, we're done. Whereas that is the case with the ones on the right.
So the one on the right is talking about.
Those are finite resources. So there's oil and coal and gas and so on. Once we've used those bubbles, they're gone. That's it. When your grandkids ask you, well, what was it like to have all that oil? You're going to have to come up with your explanation because
And then
it's gone.
the top one there, which we can pull this down, and if people want to see these slides closer up, they can contact you. The top one was talking about basically the cost.
Right.
And it really is affordable.
I think it is. I mean, right now we're getting to the stage where we're lower cost than PG&E in all the tiers. You know, in California we have our different tiered rate structure where you pay more as you use more per kilowatt hour. And we're now at a stage where we're actually breaking through and becoming cheaper than even the lowest tier. So I think and we're not going to stop there. It's not like, oh, we've reached that level, we're going to flatline now. It's going to keep going lower and lower. So there was a presentation a week or so ago where the speaker said, you know, we've won. Now, solar has won. Now it's just a matter of time making the switch over to 100%. The adoption, yeah, exactly. And a lot of that is educating people. We have the technology, we have the ability to do it. Germany's been leading the way in solar specifically, and they have terrible solar compared to the US.
Right, and I forget the
US.
name of the solar event that happens there every year, but it's one of these days I'm going to go because they have just amazing conference on solar in Germany.
Their solar trade show is just enormous. I mean, we have some big ones
miles
here,
and
but
miles,
just halls and halls of,
So let's pull one more slide up, and this slide really fascinates me. So PV versus gas rather than PV versus PG&E. I think this is the one that says that, and that's a really good point. And you know, instead of saying we're taking on PG&E, it's PV versus gas rather than PG&E. I like that.
Right.
Tell us about these 2 slides here, really quick.
So I think just to capture it in a nutshell, if you're driving a gas car and it does 20 miles to the gallon, for example, you're paying about $4 a gallon in gas in California. So 20 cents a mile, right? 20 cents a mile. That's equivalent to paying about 80 cents a kilowatt hour. Now, if you look at the PG&E price tiering, there is no tier, even the top one, that's close to 80 cents. That would be like tier 8.5 up here somewhere.
25.
So, right. So, and yet nearly everybody's on that tier for their vehicle usage, for their gasoline usage. So solar, like I said, is now competing at the baseline, at the lowest tier of PG&E. So why is it that everybody's up there on that tier 26 or whatever, as you say, when they could be right down paying, like we're paying about $0.015 a mile for our fuel for our plug-in cars right now. So $0.015 a mile, even a Prius driver is paying like 8 cents a mile. So 8 versus 1.5, that seems like a pretty big deal to me. So that's why I think it's mostly just education, that people aren't aware. They keep putting that nozzle in the, taking the fuel cap off, putting the nozzle in and complaining. And there's an alternative that could be sitting on your roof.
Now, and the next slide has to do with you tracking some of the plug-in vehicles. And, oh, here it is here. This one's a Leaf. And you've actually been tracking the sales and the return on investment for each car.
Yeah, so...
and this is just one example that you showed us on the Leaf. And we could pull that down. I thought that was fascinating, and it's a great way to show that that's really a way to go. And I guess there is the misconception too that each car needs to have a special plug-in, and that's not necessarily true.
No, I should say we have a plug-in Prius and a Nissan Leaf, and we're powering both of those through regular wall outlets. So we just plug into a 110-volt socket to charge both cars. We'll probably put in a somewhat faster charger at some stage, but you manage because you have... Yeah, 220. Yeah, 220. So that goes just slightly faster than half the time to charge. But I was tracking the numbers because if you read most of the media stories, you'd think that EVs weren't selling, or that the sales were declining, or they hadn't taken off at all, or it was just a miserable failure. There's so many headlines out there. And yet if you actually compile the real numbers and look at all the different plug-in vehicles available, and you add those together and put a line through the sales, it's going like this. I mean, the sales more or less doubled, I think, from last year to 2011.
And if people are interested in that information, they can contact you.
I have some of that on the website.
Yeah,
yes,
some of this you just showed us that one slide of the Leaf. And I think if we pull up the next slide, it shows some of the different cars. We've got the Tesla, the Prius, and I think this is a Coda car at the bottom there. Which we actually talked to them a couple of years ago at the Green Tech Summit in Sacramento. And I thought that was a great car, and I'd never heard of it. And, we could pull that down. I think it's a sedan, right?
I think that's part of the problem, that people just aren't aware. I mean, Tesla have done a great job of raising awareness and saying, look, this car can do 0 to 60. It can go 250 to 300 miles. It's won the Car of the Year award, not just the electric car of the year, but the car of the year. There's just the best, flat out the best car out there.
But that car, for a lot of people, is going to be out of reach because they have other responsibilities, where the Coda or some of the other cars might be a little bit more accessible for them.
No, the latest, the new version of the Leaf is built in the US, in Tennessee, and after rebates is less than $20,000. So, and available for $99 a month on a lease. So I don't see how anybody can argue that that's not accessible. That seems like a great deal too. And built right here in the US, just like the Teslas are, and like the Coda is assembling the cars here. Same thing, domestic vehicles.
So there was another slide that kind of fascinated. Let's bring this one up, and it was the grid parity. And we've got about 5 minutes left, so I guess we need to get through the rest of the questions. But grid parity at 350 a watt. Tell us about this. And this is with the United States showing the different highlighted areas. What is this about? Like
I've said, in California, we're way past grid parity. We're already way cheaper than most of the tiers, certainly from PG&E. And the point of this was that people make predictions, right? They say, oh, when solar reaches $4, when solar reaches $3.50. And there was a talk given recently where all those predictions had just been blown away by what's actually happened. The reality was we'd got to those targets much quicker. We'd reach grid parity much faster in a wider geographical area. And it shows that even despite naysayers that we've achieved great things and have reached grid parity in many areas, and more are being added all the time. Yeah.
So there's so many great questions. I wanted to ask you about accolades, challenges, and then, of course, any last thoughts about your company or anything else you want to share. So tell us if there's anything else you want to share, and then maybe we can get to the accolades before we get the cut notice.
I think the main thing, like I said before, is the education. So one movement that's established just recently is drivingelectric.org, and that's an opportunity for people who have questions to meet up with people who have an EV or a plug-in vehicle. And you can test drive it, you can ask them questions, you can see, are they crazy?
Kind of an online community.
It's building an online community, exactly. And I'm trying to reinforce that with what I'm doing of being available.
What's that called again for
That's called drivingelectric.org.
Drivingelectric.org, okay.
Right, and you can register as a vehicle owner. You can say what you're prepared to do. Will you answer questions? Will you give test drives? And people who have questions, likewise, can register, and hopefully we connect those groups. I'd also send them to the EAA, which is the main non-profit organization for electric vehicles.
Okay.
So that's eaaev.org. Those would be the principal
there's
ones.
probably a link on your website to that.
You'll find links to those on my website.
Okay,
exactly.
so people can go there.
Right.
Okay, and I'm getting the 3-minute warning here. So let's bring up, I think, the last slide now about community. And yet, pull that back down. Is there something you need from the community? Whether it be funding, volunteers, what are your needs right now from the community?
I think it's just to spread the word. I mean, it seems like this deal is too good to be true. You can fuel your vehicle with a fueling station on your roof that's going to have a power output warranty for 25 years. It has no moving parts, it's quiet, it has no emissions. What's not to like? You don't have to go to the gas station, drive in your garage, plug in, in the garage. Your car's full every morning. I think people just need to be told and educated and get those adopters of this technology connected with the people who have the questions to spread the movement further afield.
And your presentation was such a great one, so you'll probably be willing to, we just kind of touched a little bit quickly on everything that I think it was maybe an hour presentation.
Right.
So you probably would come out and speak for any organizations?
Oh, I'd be happy to.
Yeah, it was a great,
sure.
thank you again. It was
No, thank you.
And to Hamid that actually organized that with his group. Eco Green Group, I believe, is a group.
Eco Green Group.
Yeah,
yes.
which meets Thursdays in Saratoga.
Saratoga. Right.
And I can put a link on our website too if people want to know more about that.
Great.
So, any other last thoughts, or do you want to tell us about any? I think we have just a couple minutes left. Any other accolades or wins you want to tell us about?
No, I feel like I should thank my producer and director after last weekend, shouldn't I? I don't have the little statue with me, but no, thank you for the opportunity to discuss this subject. And like I said, I make myself available as an email address for me on npcsolar.com. There's contact info on pvev.net. So I look forward to further discussions with people and getting more people in plug-in cars and going solar.
And one thing we didn't get to, and I don't know if I'm going to say this right, is NPC imaging. And is that to do with the music industry?
Right.
Okay.
Right. That's
so
like technology applied to music notation. So that was as a result of my PhD thesis work. Yeah.
So maybe some other time when we do something with some musicians, you can come back and we'll have a little round table on that, because we are running out of time. So thank you so much for coming on, and I want to thank the audience and all the followers. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and we're in 4 markets now. We'll be in 30 markets by the end of the year, so we'll be in other markets that people can watch us. You can also watch us on Create TV, obviously Mondays at 6. That'll change next year. And thank you for the supporters, the people that make donations to SVTAGS, and we look for that to help us produce this. And just make this a great TAGS week by conserving, reusing, and rethinking the way you live here in Silicon Valley and beyond. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.